Not everybody who works as a background agent in Toronto has conversations with their performers, whether it's about a sensitive subject matter or feel comfortable taking a job from you. Because as you very well know, this industry is filled with scams and scammers and people trying to take advantage of other people. When I started my agency, that's kind of the number one thing that I wanted to kind of tackle. I have an in-person office. You can meet with me. You can meet my other performers. The constant conversations that we have over time. I have feedback from people who haven't experienced that. You're just taking a shot in the dark sometimes. There's very little control for background performers in the film industry. For everybody in the film industry, it's so important to know why you're doing what you're doing and really plan for the slow times.
Like creating an actual buffer for ourselves so we can keep doing what we love. And that's one of the motives of why this podcast was created. I personally want creatives and people that work in creative fields to feel more empowered that they can do these things.
In this episode of TMAP, I'm chatting with my friend Joanna from J Talent Agency. Joanna is a talent agent. She's a former political junkie and a total TV and film lover. After years in Canadian politics, she made the jump into the Toronto film industry and later started her own agency in 2018. With her experience in the film industry, we dive into how staying curious and creative helps you navigate the ups and downs of a career in creative fields while keeping your finances in check. Joanna shares tips on building trust, setting boundaries, and managing unpredictable income. If you're in the creative space or just curious, this episode's packed with great advice. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Money Awareness Podcast, also known as TMAP. Embark on a journey with us as we explore the world of money patterns and how they interconnect with your unique creative mind. Our goal is to help you unlock your prosperity by making one creative decision at a time. I am your hostess, Victoria Mateo. Let's get started.
So point B will be curious. Given a point A, maybe we're uninterested or we're indifferent about certain things or aspects in our work and money-related issues or in other people that we have to work with, that we have to interact with. So we're going to go from uninterested or indifferent about things, right? Like not caring so much, to actually caring and being curious about it. Does that resonate with you? Is that
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So because of your background and what you do, how do you navigate the challenge of coordinating with others' availability and like knowing that, this is something I need to do to meet a goal?
So first off is really setting clear boundaries, clear missions, clear instructions with the people that I work with. I have a very lengthy onboarding process when I meet with new prospective talent, and I need to really discuss with them everything that's expected of them so that they're aware of what my process is, what the timeline is. Every situation is very different. Every person is very different. Every booking is very different. I pay very close attention to the things that people say to me, the way that they respond to me, like indirect and direct communication, pauses, everything to kind of build like a picture. And I don't know how, but I have like an elephant memory. I remember everything. It's isn't that the thing about elephants? They like
I don't know,
That's
but
what.
I believe you. I think I've heard of a saying like that. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Anyways, um,
You pay attention to the person, right, and how they are communicating. That's like a superpower that you have. Pay
yeah,
attention to
I suppose
something
so.
different. Is I
So,
swear it's very difficult to pay attention, like be aware and like be present. This is something that a lot of people really struggle with. Call it ADHD, call it non paying attention and anxious. you know,
yes,
it's
I'm learning that actually, that that it's not a skill that everyone has.
well, but yeah, and I want to acknowledge that because it is a great skill to actually observe and decide to pay attention to the other person's
Mhm.
language, body language,
Yep.
and what they are actually trying to tell me. This is something I was talking about with a friend the other day. We were mentioning how important it is for the other party to actually feel heard if we want to create a good connection.
Absolutely.
It's not only about us saying what we think, but also deciding consciously to hear what the other has to say.
Yeah,
And I know it's
absolutely.
difficult. We don't like everyone. Like, you know, I swear it can be very difficult, but we have
Yeah.
to really decide to pay attention. And I apply one thing in my personal life and at work a lot, and especially in my coaching practice. And it's
Mm-hmm.
breathing when I am listening. I inhale and I exhale consciously, and it really puts me here in the right moment
Yeah.
and having the conversation. And I actually
Hmm.
have seen the results. I remember things, but not as the superpower that Joanna has.
I mean, so much of it just comes down to experience, to asking the wrong questions, or not asking enough questions, having that teaching moment, that learning moment where you're like, oh, I should have asked this time, or whatever it is. I kind of messed up a little bit, and now that's never going to happen again. And then just kind of building the repertoire of questions
Mm,
that I may need to ask. There are fundamentals that I do need to know, whether it's from a casting director or a performer that I'm looking to book. Um, I like to anticipate those questions. I know they're going to ask if this person is willing to be clean shaven. They're going to ask if this person is comfortable with whatever the costume stuff is. But really, kind of comes down to what you were mentioning before about curiosity. I am also curious in nature. I like to know everything about my job. Curiosity really feeds so much of those questions.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because one thing that I've learned in general in my practice is that a lot of people are not curious about something they don't like, right? And the being inquisitive and asking questions or investigate, it all comes down to like having this need of exploring and what is it about this that I don't know that I can find value in it.
Yep,
And this is how I think we also start feeling interested about getting to know more about someone or about some job.
absolutely. Yep.
And maybe we can talk a little bit about how this practicing has helped you to like actually know, okay, these are the questions that I should always ask. Our podcast producer and I have been going to networking events recently, and I
Okay.
learned that it's the practice of talking to other people that makes you understand what is it
Yep.
that you really want to know about the other person. And the same applies to a project, a job. So it's about that practice. We have to do it over and over. And it will, like, for some people, it would be more challenging than for others, right? Like, if I'm an introvert person, talking and asking questions might not come naturally, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I will say I am an introvert.
mm,
However, I am very curious in nature. I love learning. I love knowing things. I mean, I'm not a networker. I was sort of put on the spot. Like when I first entered this industry, the agent who I was working as an agent with, he called people on the phone
mm,
every single time for a booking. So we were having phone conversations where people can ask whatever they want, and you really have to lead the conversation, and you really have to kind of get people focused on the things that you need to know
mm,
while also addressing the things that they need to know, kind of fostering an environment where people who work with you feel comfortable asking you questions and that they can trust you and trust the information that you're giving them. Because in the world of film and TV, almost everything is unknown or it changes all the time. There's a lot of misinformation.
every personality is different. And some people can be very comfortable with asking them questions, and some people might not. How do you balance that? Like, not overwhelming the other person with questions, or like knowing if they're actually comfortable with what you're asking.
First of all, I feel like as a woman, I have a slight advantage here. I know how to talk about sensitive subjects. We have a lot of sensitive information, inappropriate things happening in a particular scene that people need to be aware of before they accept a job. I ease into it and I always pose it as a question. I provide the information and ask, is this something that you're comfortable with?
Mm,
Do you need time to think about it? Do you have any questions for me? I've also worked on set before. I know the issues involved with people working on set, in terms of like harassment, sexual harassment, minors on set, chaperones working with a minor. There's a lot that goes into working in film and TV and kind of navigating, again, those potentially.
like uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm speaking with my performers, we're also having a conversation. Not everybody who works as a background agent in Toronto has conversations with their performers, whether it's about a sensitive subject matter or feel comfortable taking a job from you. Because as you very well know, this industry is filled with scams and scammers and people trying to take advantage of other people. When I started my agency, that's kind of the number one thing that I wanted to kind of tackle. I have an in-person office. You can meet with me. You can meet my other performers. Like we are sitting down and having a lengthy conversation. Not only that, but the constant conversations that we have over time. I have feedback from people who haven't experienced that. You're just taking a shot in the dark sometimes. There's very little control for background performers in the film industry, very little control that they have over the jobs that they accept, the amount of money they make. And I really try to give them as much agency as possible while still making sure that I can do my job and everything is covered on my end. The work that they're doing with me, knowing that they're going to be taken care of, they can come to me with any issues that they have, they will be paid, and
Mm.
all of those things.
So you're also managing a little bit here.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually brings me to the idea that this is something a lot of workplaces are missing, that space for for the employee, for the freelancer or contractor, whoever works for you, to have that space to feel safe somehow. We are looking for a job and to earn money to feel safe. And if it's coming from a place that creates uncertainty, that doesn't make us feel secure, and we're going to have to do something that we weren't prepared to do or we weren't okay with,
Yep.
This is crucial, and this can be translated to so many industries, so
Oh,
many
yes. Oh, yes.
interactions and like situations
Mhm.
in life. It's about creating that space to communicate. And I think you are doing that so effectively that that's why you know how to not overwhelm others, because you are actively practicing with other people, just having conversations. And we can talk about anything, and that already creates the space for the other person to feel like they can
Mhm.
come to us and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this scene that I was hired to be a background performer
Yep.
in another situation. Instead of that person coming to you and saying that, probably would say, okay, no, I don't want to take any other jobs from this agent because they're putting me in this situation.
And that's exactly it. Yeah.
And that happens with any job. That happens with any situation. I guess what I want to say here is the key to staying curious is to never assume something, but really actively coming to the other person, asking or requesting an explanation. One thing that I do, especially in my personal life, is practice non assuming. I come to the other person and I say, help me understand, right, why this happened, or uh, can you explain what this means? I want to blame sometimes the fact that English is not my native language.
Okay.
But I want to give the other party the benefit of the doubt, because I might not have been in the right place mentally, physically, emotionally when this person said something to me, and I was triggered, or an emotion in me was triggered by a comment that probably meant something completely different to the other person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to let that block me from having more opportunities and connecting with the other person in the future. I want that to be a milestone. And then, okay, whenever I'm not triggered, or like when I have done some mindfulness or whatever exercise I need, I'll come back to the person and I say, okay, can you jump on a quick call? Can you answer this question for me? Is it possible that you help me understand in depth where this is coming from? And that
Mhm.
has led me to open up more paths to building connections and staying curious. Because, okay, so maybe it wasn't what I thought. And I was curious enough to come to the other person and ask, and not being indifferent or uninterested on their position, but actually, okay,
Mhm.
now I can be curious. So, do you consider worst case outcomes?
I've come to a point now where I don't always want to consider all of the worst case
Mm,
scenarios, because I don't want my mind going there all the time and bringing that to me, first of all.
because you're like, okay, I cannot be focused on the negative.
That's exactly it. I don't want to assume the worst of people. I don't want to assume the worst of a situation. I work on this every day. I need to trust other people that I'm working with to do their jobs.
Mm,
I cannot do their jobs for them. I cannot micromanage them. We're all sort of equals in a way. How I do my job and all of that relies on all of these other people to do their jobs. Again, like I mentioned, everything is a moving part in the
yeah.
film industry. Everything is changing constantly, and you just need to go with it. Then we just sort of throw it into the universe, and whatever
Mm.
happens, happens. And you just have to have that mentality of, this is how the industry works. You know, people get sick, actors get sick, weather is terrible. Movie that I'm working on right now, every day they're canceling, they're rescheduling. It's been a nightmare, but it's part of the industry. There's nothing I can do, and it's worked out so far. It's been annoying, but everything has worked out fine. And I just need to remember that I am one part of the process, and things happen when you're constantly thinking about the worst case, or what could happen, or is this person going to mess up, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, you're drawing that energy to you, and you're never going to be happy,
No.
because again, there are too many moving parts, too many people that I have to rely on in order to do my job. I would be upset all the time if if I really let these things affect me.
When you say you work on it every day, what kind of thing do you do?
Um, it's really just sort of in the moment, when something happens or whatever, I do have to, like, literally speak to myself.
Mm-hmm.
This happens. It's all okay. I the other way I think about it is, in all of the time. So this particular production that I'm working on right now, that's had all these cancellations and rescheduled and everything because of the weather. If I take this scenario and I kind of average it out throughout the month or the year or whatever, it's very normal. It's a normal amount of chaos, unexpected, worst case scenario type stuff. So when it all happens at once, I need to remind myself of that. So
Mm-hmm.
it really is just actually speaking to myself, reminding myself, having conversations with other people about it where they help me put it into perspective of, this is normal, it happens, it's worked out, it's, there's nothing you can do about it. Because again, I just cannot prepare for everything. I can prepare for this amount of change or things to go wrong, but I would be doing like 20 times the amount of work that I should be doing if I was really preparing for everything, at every worst case scenario.
And I
Yeah.
think that's like what you were saying earlier as well, like that you have given the responsibility to everyone that they're supposed to have and owning yours. And I think like that's one key advice that I would give to everyone is like take ownership for what you are responsible for and what you can control, and give to everybody else what they are supposed to be responsible. And this is
Exactly.
something that actually there's we had another guest in the podcast that really like focused a lot on this and setting boundaries and staying flexible and not just like focusing on what we can't control, which is like a great example of what you're saying.
Hmm.
um because there are many things that we can't control. The weather is the best example.
Yep.
We can't control global warming anymore, you know?
That, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the key there of being and being flexible as well is checking in with your feelings. And what you're doing is so effective. Yes, some people call it mantra, some people call it prayer, some people call it affirmations, or just like talking to ourselves and saying, okay, everything's going to be fine. And that is an act of checking in with how we're feeling. If
Yep.
not, we're just going to be overwhelmed by our own emotions. And
Exactly.
that's going to translate to every other relationship we have, every other aspect of our life that's happening at the moment.
Yep.
Imagine if you are having to deal with that, even the weather is overwhelming you, and then you have some issue with your bank account, and then you're overwhelmed because money is not flowing the way that it's supposed to, and then everything, it's becoming chaotic on top
Yep.
of another chaos and on top of another crisis, and then that affects everything and we can't manage anything.
Yep.
So again, how can I feel curious about this situation? How can I find value in the fact that the plans changed? How can I be flexible? How can I actually want to be flexible? in this situation, right? Because it sucks when something just doesn't go as planned. It's not nice. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I have to like say yes to this. Oh, okay, you know. But it's such a difficult thing to do, and especially when we want things to be stable,
Oh,
you
for
know.
sure. And let me tell you, I'm a Taurus. I love stability. I hate changes, changes in plans, all of that. It is so hard for me. So I feel very proud of myself
Good job
for,
of yourself too.
for being able to navigate that the way that I feel like I can now. Yeah.
I used to be very structured in how I like things to be done and what I thought things were supposed to be done. And being flexible was one of the biggest things I've worked throughout my life. And it has impacted positively everything
Yeah.
I do. And it allows me to, okay, so what of this change is actually interesting? Oh, okay, the weather is not working with me today. What can I do in the situation that I cannot be outside, for example,
Yep.
right? And I have to deal with it because if not, it's that's gonna deal with me, and
Yep.
I don't want that, right? Like a part of what I can control is how I deal with things.
Absolutely.
That's the situation's problem. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I think this is useful for everyone just to know that when things change, when we're dealing with people, others' availabilities, with others' needs, we have to stay grounded by staying curious. You know. So okay, before we wrap up, do you have any advice for navigating the financial aspect of our journeys?
What I would say, so particular for people in creative industries, my biggest piece of advice is you have to really, 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 really want to do what you're doing.
Mm.
You have to love your job because, I mean, as you know, film industry, so many arts type jobs, they are not very stable.
Oh,
In the film industry in general, it's like this.
yeah.
You have to plan so much and you really have to do the research on that industry to understand the slow times of the year, the busy times of the year, understanding the landscape of your industry and planning for it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of anxiety that's created in the film and TV world, whether you're a crew member or an actor or a background actor. Everybody is focused on what's happening next, what's coming, instead of kind of being present for what it is that they're doing right now. They're paying attention to what they see online or what people are talking about, which, is a lot of misinformation, is a lot of incorrect statements, a lot of people sort of posturing and saying that they're doing more than they are, or something like that. And for the people who aren't a part of that, or don't know what they're doing tomorrow, it creates this anxiety, and they are around not having that job or not knowing what's coming next month. For everybody in the film industry, it's so important to know why you're doing what you're doing and really plan for the slow times. I mean, for specifically for the people that I work with, for my performers, I always ask people, well, usually, do you have another job? Do you have a second source of income? Especially when times are not very busy. I mean, the for a background performer, it's very difficult to make this a full-time job. People try and do that. And again, it just creates so much anxiety, so much scarcity mindset. Like, so many people in the film industry are not only living paycheck to paycheck, but they put all their eggs in one basket. They don't have a secondary source of income. A lot of people have families to feed, they have mortgages to pay, all of that. And they don't look at or understand the reality of the situation. When you're coming at it from that scarcity mindset, it's very, very, very difficult. So really know what it is that you're doing, why it is that you're doing that, and
plan
accordingly. Yeah, because it's doable. I mean, the planning is a really big thing, and also planning financially.
It's tough because when we don't have that preparation as well, or like that initiative, right? Like, we don't necessarily choose to plan. And especially if we can't afford planning because we're just like actually needing the cash all the time, right? So how do we come out of that scarcity mindset and start creating an actual buffer for ourselves so we can keep doing what we love? And I think that's one of the motives of why this podcast was created. I personally want creatives and people that work in creative fields to feel more empowered that they can do these things. Because, yes, everyone can do that. And creative minds are so resourceful. We see
Absolutely.
opportunities where they don't exist because our imagination actually is always active, and we have to apply that to the things that also can be tangible, like planning for an emergency fund for whenever there's no contract available. If you want to talk a little bit about your company, Fred, you can reach out to Joanna and J Talent.
I started my background agency in 2018. Wow. It's kind of crazy to think it's been like over 6 years now. And yeah, we are one of the top background agents in the city. I mean, we're based in Toronto, but we service all of Southern Ontario, all of the like big and even small TV series, films, some commercials, some like smaller videos and those sorts of things, independent projects in the Toronto area. We are always looking for new faces. There's such high turnover in the background world, and really all that's expected of you is to come with an open mind, be flexible is needed to work in this industry. It can be a lot of fun, especially if you love film and TV, like if you love watching movies and you're so curious about like how they're made or like who talks to who on set and all of that. I mean, you can learn so much by being a fly on the wall as a background performer. It's honestly incredible.
And I gotta say, just to add to what you said, Joanna, I was also a background performer through Joanna's talent agency for my life, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a great gig. Like, to me, it was a gig, so out of the ordinary. And you actually, like, I think the best motivation is what you said. If you love film on TV and you want to be there, this is a great way to be there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
I hope this episode inspired you to continue charting your path to prosperity, one creative decision at a time. Remember to subscribe, follow, and share TMAP, the Money Awareness Podcast, on your preferred podcast platform and social media. Until next time.